Well, good evening to you and welcome back to this special live coverage of the 2024-2025 budget. What you've been witnessing on your screens for the better part of the past 2 hours has been discussions pegged on the Finance Bill 2024 and the upcoming budget statement. Just Kenyans and stakeholders sharing their sentiments on what they feel need to be changed in that particular bill that is expected to be adopted in Parliament. Two things to note, right here, of course, public participation forums came to an end yesterday with the Finance and Planning Committee led by Honorable Kimani Kuria retreating to now form that report that will be presented in Parliament for that adoption and debate. And secondly, of course, the Treasury is also expected to read the budget statement for the financial year 2024-2025 on Thursday this week. And as experts have always said, the budget is a double-edged sword. It cuts both sides. For one sector to gain, one sector has to be slashed. We want to now have a look at what is making news tonight. Let's begin by what is forking news at this hour. President William Ruto holds talks with retired President Uhuru Kenyatta over his retirement benefits and constitutes a team to address the grievances raised by the former president's office.
Yenye wanafanya kwamba tunarudi alafu wanatufukuza kwenda nyumbani, hatuna shida. They can do whatever they want to do, but let them do it according to the code of conduct.
The Teachers Service Commission refutes reports that all 46,000 junior secondary school teachers have lost their jobs, stating that only 742 teachers were sacked in connection to the protests they staged.
We call upon the government to act truthfully and consider the welfare of future generations by categorizing the muguka as a substance with significant health and social risks.
And Nairobi, Islamic religious leaders back the decision by 5 coastal counties to ban the sale and use of muguka. Plus, tonight on K24, experts and Kenyans share the expectations for the 2024-2025 budget in a special coverage segment. Good evening to you. I'm Alan Owino. Our sign language interpreter for this session is Margaret Nyambura. President William Ruto has constituted a team led by the head of public service to immediately address all the issues raised by the office of retired President Uhuru Kenyatta, including allocating an office and ensuring the presence of staff. This is according to State House spokesperson Hussein Mohammed, who said President William Ruto called for a meeting with retired President Uhuru Kenyatta regarding his demands. Robbie Omondi with the details.
On Monday, the spokesperson of the office of the fourth president, Kanze Dena, said that the former president had been deprived of funds, saying that out of 655 million Kenya shillings allocated to the office in the 2022-2023 financial year, they have received only 28 million Kenya shillings. Kanze raised other issues, including allocation of an office and car servicing for the retired president.
While the picture painted by Mr. Mwaura of the government's commitment to support the office of the retired president in accordance to the law is the ideal situation, it saddens this office to inform the public that unfortunately that picture does not exist. And our worry as an office is a precedence that is being set by the government of the day. Their decision to blatantly ignore execution of the Presidential Act No. 11 of 2023 seems to open up a Pandora's box that will leave a retired head of state at the mercy of the government of the day.
Earlier today, President William Ruto called the retired President Uhuru Kenyatta to discuss these issues, which the office of the president on its part refuted, saying it has met its mandate.
Office of the third retired president already has 33, so they have one more slot that they can ask for because they are the ones who supplied the list of the 33. And they are already deployed and earning salaries. And I wish to confirm that the office of the retired third president has staffers very well paid.
So far, President William Ruto has constituted a team led by the head of public service to immediately address the issues raised by the office of the retired President Uhuru Kenyatta.
Good afternoon.
These are issues that have raised mixed reactions from Kenyans as well as political leaders. Robbie Omondi, K24.
Elsewhere, the Departmental Committee on Education has questioned the Commission on University Education's ability to ensure proper student-to-staff ratios. This comes after it was revealed that Kisii University has only 317 academic staff for 16,000 students instead of the required 1,000. CUE argues staff numbers depend on courses and resources. Harry Chimere reports.
Kindly tell us your designation is.
At a meeting between the Departmental Committee on Education, State Department of Higher Learning, Commission of University of Kenya, Kenya Universities and Colleges Central Placement Service (CUPS), HELB and Universities Fund.
Out of 5% of 400,000. 5% of 400,000.
The legislators cast doubt on the ability of the Commission on University Education, CUE, to verify the necessary ratio of students to academic staff in universities. It was revealed that despite Kisii University declaring a capacity intake of 16,000 new students, the institution has 317 academic staff, only against a required number of 1,000 academic staff.
Some lecturers are under-teaching, others are over-teaching.
University to admit 16,000 students, yet in total there are 317 lecturers. They have 14 labs. You are just going to misuse young Kenyans if you are not doing your work as a regulator.
Honorable Chair, we would expect that the university has over 1,000.
Meanwhile, the State Department of Higher Learning has once again vowed to send fresh letters to September intake students that have clear details on the exact fees required by each student under the new funding model by 31st of July this year.
We will be issuing you with the letters indicating the contribution by the household. For now, don't worry about the figures that you see.
We would have the results, at least I can say by 31st of July, and start reissuing the letters indicating the household contribution.
Harriet Chimere, K24.
Nairobi Islamic religious leaders have backed the decision by 5 coastal counties to ban the sale and use of muguka. They are also urging the Deputy President to support this ban, similar to his efforts against alcohol in the Mount Kenya region. Dan Kaburu has more details.
The debate on the muguka ban in coastal counties continues to evoke mixed feelings daily. Today, Islamic religious leaders here in Nairobi have supported the muguka ban in coastal counties, while also calling for the same to be implemented in the northeastern counties.
We call upon the government to act truthfully and consider the welfare of future generations by categorizing the muguka as a substance with significant health and social risks, that is, as a drug with considerable negative outcomes such as psychological effects on the user, depression, insomnia, low sperm count and marriage breakdowns among other social evils.
Watu hasa na vurugu akili ama tukisema kwa Kiingereza psychosis. Unapata mtu anakuwa kama wazimu kwa sababu ya kutumia mmea huu zaidi.
The leaders have also called on Deputy President Rigathi Gachagua to be at the forefront in opposing muguka, just as he has been doing the fight against illicit brews in Mount Kenya region.
Serikali imetoa pia pesa karibu 400 million ambayo imeingia katika ofisi ya Deputy President ya kuweza kupigana na mambo ya mihadarati.
Meanwhile, muguka traders in Embu County are urging Chief Justice Martha Koome and the Inspector General of Police to intervene and enforce the court order that overturned the muguka ban at the coast.
Kwa nini anasema miraa inaharibu watu huko Mombasa? Na sisi kusema ukweli, sisi hatujaiona adhara ya miraa katika hii kaunti ya Embu.
Sasa tunaomba serikali yetu ya hapa Kenya, at least mtusikilize tu kama mkulima wa muguka, kama wa mama na wale wengine. Njui ndio biashara yenye tumezoea na hakuna makazi, tutaenda kutafuta kazi.
Mbere Northern MP Geoffrey Ruku has vowed to present a bill in Parliament to censor the Inspector General of Police for failing to enforce the court order. Dan Kaburu, K24, Nairobi.
Only 742 teachers of junior secondary schools have been sacked in connection to protests they staged while demanding permanent employment. The Teacher Service Commission refutes reports that all 46,000 JSS teachers have lost their jobs. And as Milia Kisenya now reports, those who have been affected vow to fight on.
3 days after thousands of JSS teachers who were on contract called off their strike, Their employer, the Teacher Service Commission, slashed a number of their contracts by terminating them. A matter that does not sit well with a number of those affected.
Suspending the strike was a goodwill move. Lakini hii yenye wanafanya kwamba tunarudi alafu wanatufukuza kwenda nyumbani, hatuna shida. They can do whatever they want to do, but let them do it according to the code of conduct. Sababu hakuna vile unaweza fukuza mtu kazi bila kusikizwa.
The Teacher Service Commission has cleared the air surrounding the termination. In a letter to newsrooms, TSC CEO Nancy Macharia says only 742 JSS interns have been sacked. The decision arrived at on grounds of professional misconduct. According to TSC, 10,348 who absented themselves from work from May 13, 2024 were given show cause letters to explain their whereabouts. However, out of 10,348 teachers who received the show cause letters, only 9,606 teachers responded within the 2 weeks given. Meanwhile, those affected have raised concerns with the employer, citing discrimination despite exercising the protest that were lawful.
We are voicing out, we are saying that TSC should stop the impunity and injustices, labor injustices. For 1 year, I worked for 17,000. Second year, we challenged it.
Walimu hawataki stress, they are depressed, hawana chakula, they are depressed, watoto wao wanagonjeka, they are depressed, many of us wana commit suicide.
This is so painful. These are your children, these are your grandchildren. You're not being fair to them.
Tunawaamini kwamba hiyo budget iko na maneno yetu ndani.
Milia Kisenya, K24 TV.
The manufacturing sector faces rising taxes and tough competition from imports, impacting its contribution to the economy. Local industrialist Stephen Kigera is experiencing significant losses with his 300 million shilling factory now idle. David Kagina reports on Kigera's investment journey and the challenges he faces.
This is the complete picture at the Empower Electric Products manufacturing factory located in Rudhigiti, Kiambu County. Outside the factory, cars and other products are gathering rust due to lack of use over time. Inside, eyes meet with machines worth millions of shillings that are just parked, with no work currently ongoing. Nearby, a few technicians are working with metal, which is minimal work compared to the expected production level in a place like this. The initial purpose of this factory was to produce transformers for distributing electricity and other related products in the energy sector.
To sustain the few people who are there, we have come up with we started with the hardware, where we do chainring, we do the barbed wire, we do nails, just something for consumption.
According to Stephen Kigera, the founder of the factory, who previously served in the security sector and later at the Kenya Power and Lighting Company, identifying a gap in the market led him to mobilize more than 300 million shillings in capital to build this factory over 3 years. 5 years later, what he collected is just a fraction compared to the capital invested here.
We will generate more taxes by starting the manufacturers, because now we are killing the manufacturing and the taxes are there, which means now you can only go down.
Kigera explains the challenges he and his fellow investors face, including high tax rates. According to him, the production machines they import from other countries are subjected to high taxes, similar to the inputs and products they manufacture, and he expresses concern over the proposals in the 2024 finance bill.
The costing regime becomes a bit high, so that our products are a bit higher than the same transformer in Uganda, Rwanda or Tanzania to be cheaper than a transformer in Kenya.
The second challenge, according to Kigera, is stiff competition from products imported from other countries, especially from China, while locally produced ones struggle, blaming the government for favoring foreign companies and thus harming the local manufacturing sector.
We can sustain the line construction as for KPLC and for LEREC, because all fittings, clamps, cross arms, all fabrication, tie straps, D-irons can be made here by the same machines.
Another challenge is that manufacturers of high-cost products like those produced by Kigera do not get government contracts to sell their products. For instance, In the government's last-mile connectivity project, Pan-African Transformers and Switchgear Limited from India were awarded contracts worth 3.8 million shillings, and Yushin Group from China received a contract of 3.8 million shillings to supply equipment to KPLC. Meanwhile, no local company producing such equipment was awarded a contract.
The policy has not been well structured to trickle down or even the demand, the manufacturing. So you start that you are young, you are new, 5 years downstream, you are still new.
Currently, the request from industrialists is for the government to hold a meeting with investors in the manufacturing sector and discuss how to improve local production at a time when many manufacturing companies are closing their doors, leading to many Kenyans losing their jobs and the country losing revenue.
You come inside the factory, you find it is quiet, you feel the pain. So you prefer even to stay longer in your house. The number of applicants I receive looking for a job is very high on a daily basis. It's something the government needs to calm down and say, fine, what capacity do we have in this sector? And how can we start that capacity to move forward?
David Kagina, K24 TV, Kiambu.
Well, that story by David Kagina brings us to the very end of tonight's news updates. But even before we continue with this special live coverage, remember, this live broadcast is being brought to you across 2 channels. That is our sister station, Kameme TV, as well as K24. And of course, we just love to cross over to Paris, who's been handling this on the Kameme side. Paris?
At this point, I'll be handing over to my colleague who is on the other side of the studio, Alan Owino, as we continue to analyze the budget for the year 2024-2025. Alan Owino, over to you.
Well, thank you for that, Perry. Of course, Perry is handling the news beat there right in the Kikuyu dialect. The conversation will continue, of course, on Kameme as we progress on. Pardon me. But tonight, we distill everything. Finance Bill 2024 as Kenya counts down to Budget Day on Thursday, when Treasury Cabinet Secretary Njuguna Ndung'u will break down the 3.9 trillion 2024-2025 budget estimates, which will highlight allocations to various state functions. The bill seeks to raise 302 billion worth of additional tax revenue in 2024-2025 in this financial year by amending various tax laws to raise more revenue. It's a tough balancing act between the need to raise more revenue to finance expenditure and support economic growth. But will the tax proposals in the Finance Bill of 2024 help the country in achieving fiscal responsibility without sacrificing its development goals? Does the budget deliver Ruto's promises to transform the manufacturing sector? In understanding areas of taxation, we engage experts to shed light on various areas of taxation and how they will affect individuals and businesses. Linda Koskei is in Studio B and will be speaking to the experts. My colleague Brian Mwai is in Studio A with a panel of politicians who will delve into the political intrigues of the debate, and Harry Chimer will be giving you views on social media. You can speak to us on our handles on X at K24 TV. Remember, the hashtag is Budget Outcry. I'll be leaving at that, so let's just hand it over to the guys handling the other stuff. Linda, speak to us.
Well, and I will add one more question to what you asked, Alan. Will the finance bill be a catalyst for economic development and stability, or will it will it bring more challenges and uncertainties to Kenya's economy? Well, we're yet to see that. But tonight I have a panel of experts with me. I have Job Wanjohi from Kenya Association of Manufacturers. He's the lead for research, policy and advocacy. Thank you so much for creating time, Job, today. And good to see you as well, Jude Njomo. Thank you for creating time for us today. He is a former member of parliament for Kiambu town. So good to have you.
Thank you, Linda.
Well, before we start this conversation today, I would love you to listen to one of the bites we heard from Kenya Association of Manufacturers Chief Executive Officer. But we will come back to that clip. But before then, Just give me your thoughts on the Finance Bill 2024-2025. Perhaps I can start with you, Job. What are your thoughts?
So much, and you've asked a very interesting question on the budget 2024-2025, and we have seen that the government has increased the allocation for the expenditure from the consolidated budget of 2023-2024 by about 200 to 300 billion cash shillings, because now we are talking over 4 trillion cash shillings budget 2024-2025. As far as the revenues collection is concerned, again, we have seen an increment, and we have seen this increasing from 2.9 trillion cash shillings from 2023-2024 budget to 3.4 trillion cash shillings. And now it begs the question, why is taxation increasing more? And then we are not working on how probably we can reduce further on the expenditure so that we reduce on the fiscal deficit to the GDP. Happy to note that they are targeting at 2.9%, but we can do better than that.
Yeah, because I see there's an expansion of the tax base, but we don't see whether this particular amount of funding or the amount of money collected being used adequately. So let me pick your thoughts, Jude, on that. What do you think with the expansion of the tax brackets? Do you think enough has been done? Do you feel the impact of the collection made even as the government seeks to expand its tax base?
I think the impact will be tremendous, because there are some areas which have been targeted by this finance bill that are going to affect development of our country negatively. If you look at proposals like the introduction of eco-tax, the introduction of tax on motor vehicles, will increase the cost of packaging, will increase the cost of manufacturing, because the raw material have to be transported, the finished products have to be transported. Now the finished products have to be packaged. And now the packaging material has been subjected to eco-levy, which means it becomes more expensive. Unfortunately, our neighbors are not doing the similar things. They are manufacturing the same thing, they are manufacturing the same products, and they are our competitors. Yeah. I remember, I think in the last, I think it was 2 weeks ago, when the chief CEO of Bidco Industries, he was talking about the levies that have been put on edible oil. Yeah. And he said, if these proposals are going to pass, we have no alternative but to fold. They'll have to close their factories, and they have said they are going to move into one of our neighboring countries. So the country may be targeting to improve on its revenue correction, and then it does it so much so that our industries are not going to be able to survive, and they'll opt to close down. I went to Thika 2 weeks ago, and I went to an area where they mine these building stones, and they are cut by machines, and most of those machines use either electricity power, or they use diesel. In that particular area where I was, there are about 15 mining quarries. Out of the 15, only 4 are operating right now, just because of the increase in cost of fuel and increase in the cost of diesel. So these others which have packed up, they were paying taxes to the government. They were paying levies even to the county government. But now they cannot be able to pay because the cost has become too much. Yeah. So that becomes counterproductive. So the same thing is going to happen here, where the government is targeting to collect so much such that it is going to strangle the industry, and the industry is not going to survive. So I think it is very, very important that a middle ground should be found, where, yes, industry must pay taxes. People who are earning must pay taxes, but they should not kill themselves to pay taxes. Like somebody said, now the way taxation is going, it is better the government to take my salary than I take the tax. you know, because the tax now is becoming more than the salary.
Absolutely.
So the taxation regime that we are having is not an incentive for development. It is chasing away investors. It is chasing away those who have already invested because they find it very, very difficult to survive within that tax regime.
That's an interesting way to see this. And since we have Job, who's the lead policy and research and advocacy as well at Kenya Association of Manufacturers, it's an umbrella body that deals with so many manufacturers. What are they saying in regards to this? Because clearly, if you just look at how this Finance Bill 2024 has been structured, I feel like they're the most hit.
Yes, Finance Bill 2024 is a bit punitive, and we are not saying so that we can criticize this government or criticize the Finance Bill. We are saying so because we care for the common good. We care for the jobs that are created in this country, the investments that have been made in this country. We care for the forex, we care for GDP, and we care for a lot. So we are not talking this way to criticize the document, but to give a critique and to give a voice to it so that we can better the situation. If you look at the Finance Bill, Finance Act 2023, there are various proposals, and we went and told the government. We gave them scenarios. We told them that if this duty goes through, just know you're losing jobs. If this duty goes through, just know you're losing competitiveness. If this duty goes through, we are losing investments. It came to pass. And I would give an example of like now the paper sector. We have seen factories shutting down because of poor policy prescription in terms of the duties that were put in some tariff lines for some paper products that we import that are not locally available in the country. But it was disguised like they are locally available. So those factories were denied the imported raw materials cheaply, yet our neighboring countries were getting them cheaply, and they're operating a custom union whereby we trade freely amongst ourselves. So we would rather go source from Uganda, Tanzania, rather than from here. One company in Mombasa had to shut down because they could not get the raw material. 60 jobs were lost. It was opened about about 75 years ago. 60, 70 jobs were lost, and then that is investment that is lost. Government loses its revenues. We lose our forex because we cannot export any longer. So out of that learning, the government now need to pick a lesson when you're now getting to the Finance Bill 2024 and say that if I've heard the citizenry say this, and this is government by the people and for the people, let me listen to them.
And you know,
when we're talking about the edible oil, changing the cost from 3,693 to 5,795, that is 20 liters jelly can, because of excess duty 25% that has been imposed, because of IDF changing from 2.5 to 3%, because of eco levy of 150 shillings per kg of plastic, because of another excess duty of 25% that has been introduced again by this Finance Bill 2024, and you find again an excise duty of 10% that is being imposed on plastic products. And that's why we are saying that there's cost differential on a 20-liter jerry can from 3,693 to 5,595.
That's over 50%.
Yeah, that's over 50%.
Yeah, so and that's why you find that the edible oil manufacturers are saying they're going to fold up. We are going to fold up. And doesn't mean that in the country, it doesn't mean that in the country we have enough production of this. We support backward integration. But if you have to plant a palm oil tree, it takes 8 to 9 years for optimal harvesting and production of the palm oil from such a tree. So we need now to work over time on import substitution, but we should not strive the existing industry stream.
And on edible oil, because he's looking at it from a manufacturer's point of view, I am looking at it from a consumer's point of view. If you increase edible oil by over 50%, what you are telling Kenyans is that please start boiling your food, because they can't afford a 50% increment.
It's no longer a luxury.
It is no, it is a necessity, but you can't afford it. So you say, okay, I'll just boil my potatoes and githeri and put salt and eat, because you can no longer afford that. So this tax that the government is targeting to get, they will not get it, because the consumption will go lower than 50%. Of the amount of edible oil.
And now that we're speaking about edible oils, and we have been seeing Kenyans complaining about the cost of edible oil that is going, that is set to go up, as well as the cost of bread. But there's a clip that I want us to listen to, then you can share your thoughts in regards to that, because we have those prominent clauses that has come out really prominently in this finance bill, but there are many that people really don't talk about. And I don't know whether my director, Jackso, has that in line. Kindly play it for us.
It's an extremely complex bill. What you've seen people saying is what is obvious, but as they say, the devil in the details. So there are quite a number of provisions that we think are going to make us, put us in a worse position than we were in 2023. Remissions that came in Finance Act 2023 that have actually made Kenya an importing country, even where we used to export. The products like steel, paper, we have almost destroyed those sectors. And again, we have seen a list growing on what we're calling export and...
You see, Anthony, right there, the CEO for Kenya Association of Manufacturers, is saying the devil is in the details. So away from this edible oil, bread, eco-levy, what is beneath this? What are Kenyans not seeing? Because perhaps we are just chasing the shadows, and there are pertinent issues that we should really be addressing. Perhaps we can start with you, Jude.
The most loudest scream tax that has been imposed is 16% on bread.
Absolutely.
Because this is touching everybody. Everybody eats bread. And actually, like I was saying somewhere else, we pray every morning, God give us our daily bread.
Absolutely.
And then when God gives us the bread, the government would like us to share the bread with it. So this bread is just being used, as a smoke screen. One, to divert our attention from other details which are very pertinent. So. Two, it is also going to be used as a bargaining tool because there is going to be a lot of public participation. People are going to give suggestions, and many of these suggestions are towards reducing taxes. So they will say, okay, we are going to remove the 16% VAT.
Do you feel like it's a decoy, yeah?
It is, and I can bet my last coin that it is not going to be effected. The 16% will be removed. But there are other details that we are being diverted not to see. For the young people, there is what is called digital content tax. You see, there are no jobs. Our young people have become very, very creative. Go to this avenue, Mwidibingu Street, go to streets of town where they have put tiles, and you find people with cameras, doing their own things. And this is where they are creating content. They post it on Facebook, they post it everywhere, and they get some money out of that. So the government now have seen young people are making money, so the government must also make some money out of that.
And it's the fastest growing economy right now.
It is fastest growing, but it is still a budding industry. Those guys have just bought those umbrellas, I don't know what you call them, for their cameras. They are just growing. But now you have imposed a tax on them. Some have not even opened bank accounts. Now they have to start paying tax. Now, what has government invested in that industry so that it is going to collect tax? Because the government must put some money to improve or to help that industry to grow so that they can also start taxing the industry. I would expect that the government will see there are so many youths on Mwidibingu Street. So let us put some Wi-Fi where they can be able to have their interconnection. Let us call them for seminars. Let us train them. Let us call people from Google or from TikTok so that they can advise them on what to do.
But we will continue with that conversation. It's quite interesting, and we'll also get Job's thoughts in regards to that, whether this is a decoy. But let's get to know also whether our Kenyans, our fellow Kenyans, also think that this could be a decoy. Could it be that bread is trending? The 16% imposition on bread is a decoy. Well, let's get to hear what's on the social media on K24 as well as Kamema TV. Take it on, Chume.
Yes, indeed, leader, and it is a conversation that surrounds you as a Kenyan, as you are at the center of the 2024-2025 budget conversation, as it impacts you directly. And of course, to join in on the conversation, you can send in your feedback via social media platforms, on X platform and on Facebook at K24 TV, and of course through the SMS line that you see at the bottom of your screen. And the question that you will be responding to is on our screens, and the question of the day is: what are your views on the Finance Bill 2024 and the budget set to be read on Thursday? What are your views on the Finance Bill 2024 and the budget set to be read on Thursday? And of course, comments are still trickling in and streaming in. A majority of Kenyans seem to be against it. And at a poll that we ran on K24 TV showed that 86% voted no amid 197 votes, and 6% were not sure, and 8% said yes. Now, comments are still streaming in, and we have them from our SMS line on X platform at K24 TV, and we'll be just sampling some of them. And of course, as you see on your screen, we have Waihenya, who says there is a strong desire for increased funding in education, including more support for junior secondary schools, the Higher Education Loans Board, HELB, and technical and vocational education and training, TVET, enhancements to the school feeding programs. Thank you very much, Waihenya, for that comment. And of course, we also have other comments that keep streaming in. We have Ken Ugalibora, or also known as Corazon Kuomoka, and she says, these taxes will end so many businesses and ruin so many lives. And so these comments still keep coming in and streaming in, and we have others that will be coming through our SMS line. And as you see on our screen, we have Mike, and Mike says, why is the government punishing prosperity with taxes, targeting personal possessions? And if they are trying to follow the World Economic Forum agenda of a future with no individual ownership or nothing, and be happy. That is a sentiment by Mike. And also we have another one from Rono, who says, what's the point for people to work hard and gain possessions when they'll only attract taxes? What's the incentive anymore to start businesses and employ people and own cars, etc.? He continues to say, why are they trying to pit the haves versus the haves not with half-truths? Like they're telling people the vehicle circulation tax won't affect those who don't have vehicles, but will affect PSVs, which will affect fare, plus it will affect market prices of things, since transporters will have to increase transport fees. That is a concern that has been raised by Rono. And we have another comment here from Collins Caleb, and he says it adheres to political correctness more than it does to physical, more punitive than helping. We also have another comment there from Agnes, and she says, what's the point of sending in feedback when we know it will all fall on deaf ears? And of course, those are the sentiments from Kenyans, and a majority, as you've seen, are against the Finance Bill 2024 and the budget as a whole. And of course, we will be giving you these feedbacks later on. But if you want to also participate in the conversation, you can send in your feedback via social media platforms on X and on Facebook at K24 TV, and of course on the SMS line that is at the bottom of your screen. For now, I hand over back to the side of the studio.
All right, we are here live on K24 and Community TV, just bringing you up to date with what is happening as far as the budget is concerned, having a conversation that is very critical for this particular nation. And I do believe that, I hope that particular viewer doesn't lose hope, because we do hope that these views will actually be taken seriously and do not fall on deaf ears. I want to have a conversation here as far as this particular budget is concerned. And joining me for this conversation is Dr. Mutunga. Dr. Mutunga, who is the chair for Agriculture Committee and also the Member of Parliament, Tigania West, seated, of course, on the far left, thank you so much for making time for this conversation tonight.
Thank you very much indeed.
All right. Also, next to him is Honorable Jeremiah Kioni, who is the Secretary General for the Jubilee Party. Thank you so much for making time.
Thank you for the invite.
I'm tempted to ask you mlima inafanya aje, but that's a conversation for another day. Okay, thank you so much for that. And seated next to him, of course, is Honorable Ndiri Tumurithi, who is the former Laikipia governor. Thank you so much for making time. And Dr. Makali Mulu, who is the Vice Chair, Debt and Privatization Committee, and also the Member of Parliament for Kitui Central. Thank you so much for making time for this conversation tonight.
Thank you.
I want to throw it to the Members of Parliament here, because you see, this is, it's kind of extended public participation here. And in most cases, you're the ones that are going to the National Assembly to get to debate this bill and get to decide at the end of the day whether you're going to pass it or not. And when you do that, you are speaking for the people that you represent. Let me start with you, Dr. John Mutunga. What is the ground saying from your end?
Thank you very much indeed for that question. We have been listening a lot to what people are saying, especially about the finance bill.
Mm-hmm.
And the way these two legislations or legislative proposals are structured, budget comes, then the finance bill follows to finance the budget. But based on what has been happening lately, we have had a lot of indulgence in the finance bill until we almost forget there is a budget. I remember when the budget was presented in the House, and I was requested to second. I saw a lot of harmony in the House. Everybody was happy about the proposals from all the sides of the House. It was not from one side of the House. The kind of, the orientation of the budget itself, the structure of the budget, the content of the budget itself. But on the other hand, when you come to the finance bill, there are hiccups. People have issues with certain clauses, certain provisions in the finance bill.
What are your people saying?
Of course, people are saying that the tax on bread should not be included. People are also talking about the motor vehicle tax, the 2.5%. There are others who are involved in businesses of importation, who are also a bit uncomfortable about the eco-levy, and especially on the ICT products that they are importing. So there are mixed feelings. But we hear a lot more of criticism on the budget as opposed to, on the finance bill, as opposed to support the finance bill. Yet the finance bill has certain attributes which are also positive and which are reinforcing. And if we look at the budget, and we are very happy about the budget, we should also look at the finance bill in a positive sense and ask ourselves, how do we now finance, how do we finance this bill, this budget? Because, and that's what I said in my closing remarks, I said that I hope that this is the spirit that is going to prevail in this House, that both sides of the House will join hands when it comes to discussing the finance bill and passing it, that will have very concrete proposals on the finance bill that will be enhancing, that will be enabling Kenyans to come up with a finance bill that is widely acceptable and supportive of most of what Kenyans are saying.
Okay, I'll be coming back to you later. Let me come to you, Dr. Makali. You are from Kitui Central. What are your people saying as far as the budget is concerned, and also some of the cuts that we've experienced and the finance bill at the end of the day?
Yeah, thank you very much for hosting us. Kitui Central people, just like the rest of Kenyans, are saying that the finance bill is not good for them, and we need to do all it takes as members of parliament to say no to it. But let me simplify this debate so that our viewers can understand. When you talk about budget 2024-2025, this budget has two sides of the coin. One side is expenditure proposals. The other side is financing proposals. Now, when you look at the total budget which has been proposed, it is 4.006 trillion. The figures you are showing there are not right. We approved this figure Thursday, and the figures have changed. It is 4.00 trillion. Now, that is the expenditure side, which means when you go to that, you will see where the money is supposed to be applied. Now, the other side is the financing proposals. And this is now what I want to explain so that Kenyans appreciate what we are doing. Now, the financing side, what is being proposed is Kenyans, where you and me, we are part of that group, we are supposed to contribute 2.9 trillion through ordinary revenue, which means taxation. Now, the additional 400 or so billion is supposed to come from services which are offered by the government, services and goods where Kenyans pay for those services. We call them in technical term A in A. Now, there are about 100 million of grants where our development partners and friends have decided to give Kenya grants you don't pay. And if you do the tabulation of that, you'll have a financing gap of 602 billion. That's now the gap now which is not funded. And that gap now is where you will talk about borrowing. Now, let's come back now to the ordinary revenue, which is 2.9 trillion. Now, out of that, this year where we are now, we are supposed to have collected, using the 2023 Finance Act, about 2.5 trillion. Now, the current finance bill, which is now the proposed one, 2024, is supposed to collect 302 billion to make the total to about 2.1 trillion. So this controversial finance bill, if we decided to shelve it and say it's not there, we'll have a financing gap from our ordinary revenue of 302 billion. And that's what we are debating. So it is important Kenyans understand that disaggregation. And why am I saying that? If you look at the current 2023 Finance Act, the expectation was to push this country from about 2 trillion to 2.52 trillion. As we are discussing, and from the projections from Treasury, we are going to fall short by about 270 billion, which means at the end of the day, we will not collect about 300 billion. Now the question is, if the current Finance Act has not managed to collect what was targeted, and then we have another act which projects to collect even more, is this realistic? The thing it is not going to be realistic. We have set ourselves of ambitious targets, and it is obvious that at the end of the day, we'll be falling short of our expectation.
Okay.
So now the most important question, what the most important question is, Kenyans have been so keen looking at where will the money come from.
And we'll be getting deeper into
that.
And
we are not very keen on looking at where will the money be applied. Application is expenditure. If we had spent as much effort in looking at where will the money be applied, in terms of where are we spending the money on, and we normally have what we call core priority expenditure items, more likely we would be able to save some money out of that other side where the core expenditure items.
What should be our focus then? Where should we look?
Both. We should be looking at both. But you see, we are so much into looking at the financing side and not the expenditure side. Because I can tell you for sure, if we sat down with that expenditure proposals and said, does this expenditure proposal make sense, bearing in mind the current economic situation we are in, we can easily lock them out, and then that would be a big relief from the financing side.
All right.
So that when we say leave out the tax on bread, leave out the tax on cars, leave out the tax on financing services, that all can be filled by reducing the expenditure.
Okay, I'll be coming back to you later on. I want to engage Githunguri Member of Parliament, that is Gathoni Wamushomba, who is joining us live. Hello, Honorable Wamushomba. This is the thing. I'm asking your colleagues here just the same question, because you are one of the people that in the past, financial year, that is 2023, 2024, you said you're listening to the ground. The ground told you go to Parliament and vote no. What is their take this time round? What are they telling you?
Thank you so much for having me, and I'm glad to be part and parcel of this discussion. Indeed, I have gone to my ground. I am voted in Githunguri constituency, which is in Kiambu County. We are generally farmers. We do agricultural business, which is the business of farming and making money out of that farming. And I have interacted with my milk farmers, my tea farmers, my coffee farmers, my macadamia farmers, my avocado farmers, and generally the business community in my constituency. And I have tried to unpack the finance bill to them bit by bit. And of course, I have been able to unpack areas where they are generally affected. And they have advised me, and they are continuing to advise me as we approach the voting day. But just in a nutshell, my farmers are concerned about the increased cost of production when it comes to issues of inputs that they use. They are concerned particularly on the value addition, which is actually the business aspect of agriculture. And particularly the milk farmers, you know, we practice our dairy farming, and we have our own brand of milk. And of course, that milk is value added, and that process of value addition is actually getting to be affected by the proposed eco tax, because for every packet of milk, that packet has attracted some eco tax or eco levy, and that generally is going to reduce the profitability of the farmer. The same with the tea packers. Those packers that use bond paper, virgin paper, craft paper that they used in the process of value addition in tea, definitely paper has really been hit by the proposal, because there is more increased excise duty on paper, all the type of papers that they use within the value chain of tea. And I am talking about the excise duty that has been added or proposed, the import duty. Of course, on top of the existing duties that were there, it is unbearable for the value addition value chain for tea and for coffee. And therefore, having listened to my farmers, who also use a lot of wheelbarrows in our dairy industry and our coffee industry, and of course, you know, if you don't know, maybe I can touch on that. The wheelbarrow that we use to push our coffee into the coffee factories.
You've listened to them, Honorable Mushomba. You've listened to them. They've told you their concerns, and you're going back to the House. What are they saying? What are they sending you to do? Are they sending you to go give different proposals or shoot it down entirely?
They want me to shoot down the proposal on areas that I have touched, and many other areas, if you give me an opportunity, I can highlight on. But basically on areas that are touching on their edible oil, motor vehicle tax, circulation tax, and those areas I've touched on, they're saying they need me to review that either by amendment or shooting it down.
All right,
so I have two proposals on my table. I will make a decision.
Okay, we'll be coming back to you to just get the details more on what the people of Githunguri are saying as far as this particular bill is concerned. Let me engage Honorable Kioni. Honorable Kioni, you said this is the worst bill than the 2023 one. What is your reason behind that?
One, I think, let me just say that earlier in the day I was with the people of Murang'a. And I think you get the general mood in the country. And the general mood is that they do not want this finance bill. In fact, what I heard them say in Murang'a is that if that bill is passed in the presence of their members of parliament, they should not leave the parliament precincts. But I think there is, I know we can continue talking about figures, but when you engage them and ask yourself, who is in charge of this country? You have a whole population that has rejected a given legislative proposal. And we cannot see any movement or thinking of what are they doing, what are they saying. While we can deal with the specifics as they have been proposed in the bill, I'm concerned more also about the political instability that this bill will come with. And wondering whether those who are in offices are thinking beyond what is before them.
When you talk about political instability, what exactly are
when you
looking
have a whole population that has rejected the finance bill, it means that we are going to go through another 12 months, like it happens last year, of people being taxed when they are unhappy. They have, there's nothing that you can show for what they have been paying for in the last 1 year. Mm-hmm. And I think it is important to just say that. Other than just paying, one of the things that encourages people to pay taxes is when you see projects being undertaken. But when there is nothing happening anywhere near you, and you're already suffering because of the heavy taxation that was introduced in the previous bill, and now we know that we are required to pay a little bit more because there is a shortfall of about 302 billion shillings, that certainly is going to make life more painful. My question is, and I know we have colleagues here, is who are we talking to? Have we gotten to a point where you have just given up because those who want to pass the law will pass it? And I can tell you what one of the other things I heard them say is that they don't want to see people walking out. Okay. You're either voting yes or voting no. There is nothing like neutrality. Okay. So don't walk out. So I think the issues that have been raised, the specifics are there, we can raise them. Mm-hmm. But this is, I think, is a much broader conversation. And it goes to the point where we actually don't even discuss the expenditure side. We just propose, and we are happy to see projects being proposed in our area. And then, of course, we have to finance them. But we do not pay attention, we don't bother with the level of taxation that must come with financing some of these projects. Mm-hmm. But worse still, you don't even see those projects 1 year later. And as I allow my colleague to say this, we have only 20 days left between now and the end of the financial year. Yeah. This is the time where mega scandals happen. Because everybody lashes to spend the money they never spent in the last 12 months.
Honorable Murede, let me come to you. The implication, just like Honorable Kioni said, we have 20 days since for this financial year to come to an end. When we get to pass this, when we go to Parliament and members of Parliament debate this and say, okay, we are putting a tick on it, what will be the implication in the long run?
Well, two things to say. Firstly, if leaders were not tone deaf, if they were listening to what we've been saying reduce expenditure. So we cannot argue that it has not been said. And we have been quite specific about which areas of expenditure you should cut. Mm-hmm. For instance, avoid duplication. Why does the national government need to pretend to be carrying out the functions that are already devolved? In health, in water, in roads. So what you find, for instance, you have a Kenya Rural Roads Authority, which is working on roads that legitimately and by the constitution are the province of counties. Why should the budget of the health ministry of Afia House, I know in your screen you've said that their budget has come down by 7 billion, but you'd be asking from what to what? Why does that ministry need, or that department need 130 billion in a budget? What do they do with it? So we have presented over and over the areas that the national government needs to avoid duplication. That alone, you can reduce expenditure by anywhere from 400 to 500 billion. So you would not actually need this year's Finance Act. We've also said, let's do zero-based budgeting. Mm-hmm. The way things happen today, you take whatever the amount that was in a particular program last year, then you add on top of it, and that's what is presented. Some programs, their time is finished. And we should encourage Kenyans to check whether the executive office of the president still budgets for NIMS, whose mandate came to. So there are many places where the budget, because there is no recheck of whether the program is actually necessary today, we are budgeting for the same things, even though we should not be budgeting for them. If you use zero-based budgeting, you will again reduce another 400 billion of wasteful expenditure. So, what is lacking is that the leadership, and unfortunately, you know, both the legislative leaders, and they're here, as well as the executive, they stand accused. What Kenyans have been saying, reduce the expenditure, because if you do so, you will not need to try and squeeze us and close our businesses in the process. Okay. So it is that the leadership, particularly on the executive side, is tone deaf. They can't hear what we Kenyans are saying to them. So therefore,
when you say they can't hear, yet you're doing public participation with the hope that they get to listen to us and hear us. So what do we do in this particular? Is that a formality? What do we?
Well, unfortunately, it looks like a formality. You just carried a segment earlier where somebody with a manufacturing plant in I think in Kiambu somewhere, when your camera was there showing that this plant has closed because of taxation. Just a week ago, I saw a plant manufactured an assembler of motorcycles in Nanyuki, which has closed because of taxation. Obviously, the decision makers are not listening to what Kenyans are saying.
Decision makers are not listening.
They are not listening. So what should happen? No, what should happen in proper democratic conduct? And that's why you saw last year when we went to Maandamano, what you know, because citizens have a constitutional right to go to the street to say we are unhappy with this, and the response you saw was an administration that was then arresting us and doing all kinds of things because they're not listening. But what Kenyans ought to do is to realize that we are not really helpless and we cannot be held in this captivity forever. Okay. That we must be able to step up and free ourselves.
I want to throw this to Dr. Msunga because we just been accused decision makers are not listening. You are a member of parliament, you sit in the house, you're going to make a decision on behalf of your constituents. Are you listening to that?
Thank you very much. I don't think it is correct to say that the wishes and proposals of Kenyans are falling on deaf ears. It is not true. If we reflect back what happened last year, there was Ula Balu on the same finance bill. There was a lot of chaos as a result of the cost of living. And that was brought by mainly two issues. Number one, the cost of fuel had gone up, and there was an additional 8% VAT on the fuel. And the second one was the cost of unga was high. The government...
So they were justified to go to the street then?
Going to the street was not the solution. When Kenyans speak in such forum or any other place, the government hears, government listens. So several things were done. And today, and I haven't seen that, what I would have probably expected to see is when the cost of fuel was 205, there was an outcry, shillings per liter of petrol. There was a serious outcry. Right now, whenever it went down by 2 shillings or 3 shillings or even 5 shillings, I never saw any appreciation at all. Not in the papers, not among the leaders, not among anyone. Government is doing nothing.
But this
now, let me just, you asked me a question, let me just answer. On the other hand, let's look at the cost of unga. The cost of unga, the government chose not to subsidize consumption, decided to subsidize production, and then generally brought the cost of unga to close to half. Right now, you can find a packet of unga, of 2 kilogram unga packet at 140 shillings and so on. There is no thank you to the government. We only look at other things that we can basically... the issue here...
The only thing is that government, we'll give it back to Dr. Mutunga, but government cannot claim to be responsible for rain. The only reason cost of food has come down is because it rained last year and it has rained this year. No, that's not my data. Take the data from the central bank. Take the data from the Kenya National Bureau of Statistics.
They conducted the players.
So you cannot, so government is looking to take credit because it rained. I think that is...
I am in record as having said this. Yeah. that we cannot attribute the over 60% increase in production to fertilizer alone. There was the rainfall, yes, which contributed a certain percentage. There are three fundamental factors that increase productivity in a crop: good seed, water, and soil health. If you don't take care of soil health, forget about production. You can plant the best seed, you can irrigate it, you can water it, but you'll not be able to get, you will not challenge the crop.
Many citizens were being given crushed stone. This was all in the media.
So what we try projecting here, let me just finish prosecuting my point. What we try projecting, if we look at the finance bill, we look at what are the bad things that we can amplify to Kenyans so that we may antagonize them to the government. Now, if we were really objective and patriotic, as sometimes we claim to be, we would look at where can we reduce the cost in terms of the budget. And I'll tell you some proposals. Number one, after the structural adjustment programs, governments have been shrinking in terms of the labor force, the workforce. The workforce has been shrinking. Some of the natural attritions are not replaced. And apart from, of course, some of the sectors like education, where we have continued increasing the population of employees, in most of the others we have reduced. Why don't we, the economists in this country, the experts in this country, why don't we look at the relative change vis-a-vis the relative increase in the budget? When we talk about the current budget, maybe they are remaining static or increasing. Do we question that? We question that in my committee. We have to know exactly when you're increasing the money to personal emoluments, how many more people have you employed? Okay. So those are the kind of, the other thing that we're also discussing here. You hear somebody saying edible oil. Let me just say the issue of edible oil before edible oil is also people are complaining.
Just a minute, I'll come back to you. Honorable Mushomba, let me throw this to you first before I come back and give Dr. Mutunga a chance to finish his point. This is the thing. So the government of the day, that is the Kenya Kwanza government, has a plan, and that is the bottom-up economic plan, which they say envisages investments in agriculture, health, housing, businesses, and digital and creative economies to power the economic, political, and social pillars of the Kenya Vision 2030. But when we look at these particular proposals in the finance bill, and also some of the cuts that we've seen in the health sector and also issues to do with education, does this in any way propel the government in its achieving its agenda in the long run?
Well, I don't think I'm the right person to speak about the Kenya Kwanza government because, of course, definitely I'm not the spokesperson. But giving my own analysis, I think this government is undoing what progressively should have been achieved. I do not think that introducing a withholding tax on digital marketing, for example, digital marketing platform or a marketplace that was engaging a lot of young people who are ideally supposed to have been employed by the same government, but they did not get employment by the government, and therefore they sought to engage in the digital platform, would be the right idea into achieving the government's plan, the Kenya Kwanza plan. I also don't think that it's a good idea for us to start hammering so many taxes onto what the young people are creating on their own, especially when it comes to content creation and the taxes that we have proposed to exert on what they are creating on their own. I feel like we are retrogressive. We are not taxing people towards achieving the plan, or rather we are over-ambitious, and probably maybe we should come up with a progressive way of doing, of introducing taxation. And on that, I feel like we have bombarded the plan with a lot of new taxes that are outside the national tax policy. I hope you have been able to go through the national tax policy, and I feel like we are completely out of what is supposed to be aligned with this policy. And the many taxes that we have introduced have somehow made us lose focus and look like we are planless, or we are rudderless for that matter. For example, I hope you can hear me because my earphone has fallen off, and I'm in the village. But look at, for example, the taxes we have proposed on gadgets that the young people are using. For example, like this microphone. I mean, we have introduced a tax, an eco levy on this microphone, on a phone, a smartphone, which a young person could have used as a digital content creation tool. Look at the many taxes we introduced on lights that they are using to do their TikTok stuff. You know, the many, even the earphones that they are using to just monitor their content. We are just bombarding them with a lot of taxes, and therefore removing them from the plan as a center stage for their attention in jobs creation. So I hope I've answered your question because I can't hear you, but I feel like we are planless, we are outside the plan. Even agriculturalists, look at what we promised. We promised GMR. Where is GMR? Instead of introducing GMR, or rather bringing GMR on board, we are introducing so many other taxes, including the farm tax, which has been activated by introducing or by amending the tax that is, I mean, amending the act that is enabling us to collect that farm tax from the farmers. That is the 5% farm tax. So I think we are out of plan, and I think it's time for us to go back to the drawing board.
Particular insight. Now, this is the thing. She's talking about something very important here, and we're talking about the idea behind most of these issues. Those, can we now, widen the tax base? Did we widen the tax base, or did we just bombard the people that were already paying taxes with more taxes?
What is happening, I think, is a structural issue. When you look at the Kenyan economy, our informal sector is quite substantial. And in a situation where you have an economy where the informal sector is substantial, it becomes very difficult to tax because of the challenges of collecting the money. So the easier way is always the formal sector, where we all belong. People who have pay slips, people who have accounts which you can easily look at and say this is the tax element. But having said that, I think really we need to, one of the best ways out of this problem, I think I have about 4 or 5 issues we need to address. One of them is to expand the tax base so that we get more Kenyans coming to the tax bracket. And as a result of that, then we'll be able to collect more taxes without increasing taxes. The other element, if you look at our revenues, out of the 2.9 trillion proposed revenues, about 1.8 trillion is supposed to go to public debt repayments, both interest and the redemptions. Now, if you are to sort the issue of the public debt repayments, automatically that takes a big chunk, almost 70% of our revenues. So it means even as we look forward in terms of managing our economy, this is an area we can't ignore at all. Because if we ignore that area, we are done. The third area where we need to look at is the issue of misapplication and misuse of resources, public resources. And this has been captured by the Auditor General. If you look at the reports of the Auditor General every year, she is reporting that about 30% of the budgets are being misapplied or misused, in quotes, corruption. So it means if really as a country, we come out and say, enough is enough with corruption, you could easily save Kenyans more taxation by sealing the loopholes of taxation. Okay. The other important issue is important, and which we need to address. If you have looked at the presentation by Kenya Association of Manufacturers, what they are saying in short is, we are in a global economy. In a global economy, people are competitive. And if I find production in Kenya very expensive, I would rather go for importation. Those imports, I import them. Mm-hmm. And when you import things from outside Kenya, you have actually exported your employment. And by doing that, this country will continue suffering high unemployment. When you have high unemployment, then your payee suffers. So it's a very complex matrix, and I think what we need is, we need to have people who can listen to the experts, what they say. And by doing that, we'll be able to help this country. Mm-hmm. But I see a situation where, as we were saying earlier, we have a government which doesn't seem to listen to what the people are saying. Our people are saying out there, we would want to pay taxes, but we have no capacity to pay the taxes. Mm-hmm. On that basis then, can we think of other ways? Because it's a common principle that you can't overtax people beyond their capacity to develop. Okay. You'll not get any tax. You collect less by decreasing the rate.
Let me throw this to Honorable Kioni. When it comes to, widening the tax base, because in most cases, when we look at what has been presented and what is happening, it's like the government is having it wrong. How do we widen the tax base and not overburden the already burdened tax base?
Unajua, nitaongea na Kiswahili kwa sababu naona tunaweka maneno mzito na tunaongea na Wakenya hapa. Na hii kitu ni rahisi, even if you have not gone to an economic class. Unaweka tax, factory inafungwa. Unaweka tax, watu wanapoteza kazi. It shows something is wrong. And kama hauwezi sikiza hiyo, maana yako kwa kuwa kwa serikali ni gani? And when we say the government, it is everybody in order. And all those people are together. Don't come and play populist things here. What we are not being told, ama yale ambao tuambiwi na wale ambao wako bugeni, ni kwamba wao wenyewe walipitisha budget ambayo inatakikana tuifinance. Na pale mwanzo ndio wakiangalia waone, where are we budgeting for corruption? Where are we budgeting for this wastage? When we were seated at the Nadico, Boma's place, the controller of budget came and said, mimi mwenyewe nilikuwa nimepatiwa mshahara 18 million shillings more while I'm supposed to get 9 million in a year. Yeye mwenyewe. And she also said, this is what had been done to all senior civil servants. How much of this money are we being forced to pay taxes so that people can take away?
Okay.
And that is what the governor was saying. If we pay attention to many of the things that have been suggested, and I have had them present in the Economic Council, as new Economic Council, of the areas that do not need to be provided with money. And there is, certainly, it was done by Kibaki. 3 years of a balanced budget, and the whole country recovered. Na mimi nataka kusema hivi, hata tuseme maneno gani hapa. Kama mtu leo atalala jaa, na alikuwa nakula jana kwa sababu ya taxes, hata useme nini, hiyo biru ni baya. If you cannot be able to address ourselves to that, we need to move with Kenyans in all these things that we are doing. We are managing this country on their behalf. It is not for them to be exited, like somebody said. You can go and locate your factory in the neighboring country and we buy from them. That kind of mentality which seems to have permeated all government offices. And that's why I'm asking, who is in charge? Who is in charge? Nani? Hii dunia ni kama sisi tumeachwa tu, ni kama wanyama tu. Kama is like we have nobody. I mean, look at what we were being treated to yesterday about the former president's payment. 600 million shillings is budgeted for. He has received 28 million shillings. Na hiyo ingine imeenda. And yet, we were overtaxed last year to finance part of that. That is where the problem is. Okay. See, hii kisoguru mingi tunaweka hapa, shida ni hapa. Wizi ndio imejaa na hii watu.
Dr. Mutunga, accountability. How do we ensure accountability here? We are parliamentarians. We need to, do the oversight. What happens?
Hata mimi hebu nijaribu kuongea kwa Kiswahili. Kwanza kabisa nilisema vile sisi tunafanya tukiwa wa Kenya. Sana sana wataalamu tunajaribu kuona ni nini pale ndani ya pendekezo ambayo tutatumia kuharibu vichwa za Wakenya, mawazo ya Wakenya. Badala ya kuangalia ni nini tunaweza kuambia serikali hii na hii toa. Na ndio nilikuwa nasema hivi. Lililoko muhimu kabisa ni kujiuliza kama kuna pesa inatumika nyingi kwa wizara ama idara ama shirika lolote la serikali. Na tunajua hiyo pesa kweli sisi tukua wataalamu tunaweza hesabu, tunafanya ile hesabu na tujue ni kiwango gani. Hiyo pesa tungesema hiyo iwe reduced. Budget na tuone kama serikali itafanya hivyo. Quantify. Let us say this is excess. Let it be removed from the budget. Now, two things. Number one, there is an issue that was brought up about edible oil. All of what at Wakenya wanalalamika. What the government is doing is to give farmers oil seed wapande ndio waweze kutengeneza kutoa na wanapatia pressers, oil seed extractors, na sio ile ya ram press ile ya kusukuma na mkono. The ministry is buying, I'm talking about the Ministry of Agriculture, where I am the chair of the committee. The ministry is buying motorized pressers. What is that going to help us with? Number one, they will produce oil which they can filter and use. Secondly, they will stop buying oil from there. What will that? We will stop exporting money, looking for the dollar to send out there to buy. Last year, the dollar was so high because we were even buying maize. We were buying food for ourselves. This year, the dollar is stabilizing because of some of those controls. We are doing what is called import substitution. Number two, when you enable these people to produce,
sure
when they produce, they engage an income. But when you prioritize as a matter of policy to import, using 150 to 170 billion every year to import hand oil, so that you can reconstitute for Kenyans, and you are employing 30,000 Kenyans, you impoverize 2 million Kenyans. Ukiproduce hapa, million billion ya Kenya watafanya kazi. Let me come to GMR. What this government has done, GMR on coffee, the cherry fund has basically stabilized coffee, cherry, at 80 shillings per kilogram. Go to the factories. The Ministry of Cooperative is doing that. Let's look at the milk. During the peak period, we used to have a kilo of milk selling at 30 shillings, 28 shillings. This time, there is money to mop out milk because there has been a lot of production due to the rains. So we have 1.1 billion, and the government is adding to make it 2 billion, so that we can mop out that milk through the leadership of the new KCC. Then the milk prices are supposed to stabilize at 50 shillings. Right now it's stabilizing at 47 shillings. Look at macadamia. It was just a policy pronouncement, an executive order. Macadamia is selling at more than 100 shillings. The 100 shillings was the guaranteed minimum return. So give the government a fair chance to show you how these things are going to be realized.
It is called bait and switch. That's what the government is doing. Bait and switch.
To represent, if they are not feeling it and they are the ones that are calling you out.
I would be very surprised to hear a milk farmer who was selling a kilo of milk at 30 shillings and is selling now at 47 shillings and complaining. Honestly, I would like to hear to see such a farmer. I would like to know a Kenyan farmer who was getting 20 shillings for coffee.
Thank you very much. It has been said here, and that we should say which areas we can cut waste for expenditure. I want to repeat what I said. Our leaders are tone deaf. We talk to them, we present to them, they don't hear. I have said in this very program that stop duplicating county functions. How complicated is that? Every function that is a devolved function, please stop budgeting for it in the national government, because the function is actually at county level. We have said here, more than 1.8 trillion will go to debt service. Over $1 trillion is interest payment. 70% of that is domestic debt. Okay? Why is it so high? Because government has decided to pay 18% on the borrowing. Government can actually decide, as Kibaki did before, to pay 2 or 3% on domestic borrowing. How complicated is that? Basi nijaribu kwa Kiswahili. Ikiwa basi viongozi Kiswahili ndio wataelewa. Nasema hivi, riba ambaye serikali inalipa kwa mkopo ya serikali iko juu zaidi. Ama niseme mno. Kwa hivyo, hebu leta riba chini. Serikali pia kopa usichukue yote katika soko ya hela. Government must stop squeezing out the private sector from the credit market, which is what government has been doing. All these proposals are on the table. When government decides as a matter of policy that interest is going to be 18% tax-free, which means on a taxation equivalent is 22%, you or the person with a duka in Karatina is paying 28% interest on there. Those are the things that we have been talking about. Now, compare that with what counties do. Because after all, we have 2 levels of government in Kenya. Okay. For counties, it is a fee for service. Most of the revenues in counties is a fee for service. That's why you don't hear the same kind of debate about what counties are doing, because the citizen pays for a fee or for a service. Like when you go to health facilities, or when the agricultural officer or the veterinary officer is inspecting your livestock and so on. You are paying for a service. And that actually is a better way, so that you are not paying monies that are being used. We've been told here, where can we reduce? So where I conclude, because we've been challenged that way. In this budget before, or in the expenditure proposals that in any case Parliament has passed, you will find that the Office of the President, or Executive Office of the President is called now, more than 2 billion in additional expenditure. For what purpose? You've seen, you were running it now, Office of the Deputy President, nearly 600 million more. So when you ask Kenyans that show us where is this you want to change, I mean, honestly, we are back in the dark Kano days when the then president used to ask us, which section of the Katiba do you want to change? Okay. What we are saying, government needs to live within its means. I ask you this as I conclude. President Kibaki's budget was 300 billion in year 2. Okay, 300 billion, and he was balancing. He had free primary education. We could see the roads that he was building. This current administration, you are talking about 4 point something trillion. Why can't you balance the budget?
Okay. Why can't we balance the budget? Honorable Mushomba, I want to give you a chance to finalize on this conversation. I wish you had more time, but we are running out of time. So, your final comments on the whole budget and the finance bill. Let me hear from you from Githunguri.
I don't know whether you can hear me, but first of all, I have followed the discussion that you have, and I would want to correct Dr. Mutunga, my colleague, who has said that the coffee cherry fund has been disbursed to farmers at 80 shillings per kilogram, money that was supposed to stabilize coffee prices. And I want to correct him because I represent farmers who are mainly in coffee and tea and milk, and I can confirm as a farmer myself, who also practice coffee farming, that that cherry fund that he's talking about at 80 shillings has not yet been received by some farmers. And I have some coffee societies in my constituency which have not who have not received that kind of cherry fund advances as he has put it. And I also wanted to comment briefly on what you asked about the accountability. And the government of Kenya, the Kenya Kwanza government, need to come out very clearly, even as we, receive their proposal on what they would want us to do so that we can expand the tax base and increase the amount of money that we are collecting. And I want to refer to the taxes that have been proposed on cooking edible oil. And if you go to the original or the previous taxation platform that exists for cooking edible oil, you will notice that there is a tax that has always been paid, and this tax was supposed to help us promote the growing of oil crops in Kenya. I mean, crops like sunflower, soya, palm oil, and such like crops that can help us originate our own edible cooking oil. That tax is called Nut Crops Development Levy. It is normally charged at any consignment of oil imported into this country at 2%. And this is not just a tax that was, or levy that was introduced last year. It has been there. So we are talking about accountability. How accountable are we with this kind of money that has been collected? And can we show how much of it that has been used to promote the growing of nuts, oil-related crops in this country? That's accountability question that we need to ask ourselves, and whether we are doing the right thing by extorting more taxes on this cooking edible oil, yet whatever we have collected for many years, we actually cannot show for it. I would request you that you repeat the question you asked me, because I didn't get it clearly.
Let me just ask you this, because now we are going to vote on this one, and in most cases, based on history, we've gotten to see some members of parliament, come out and say we voted for something that we did not understand. Do you believe that the members of parliament, your colleagues in the House, based on what you guys debate on and the kind of conversations you have, do understand what this particular bill actually means before they go cast their vote this coming week?
My brother, it would be unfair for you to ask me a question concerning other members of parliament, because definitely I am not their whip and I am not their spokesperson, so I can't sit here and speak for them. But based on what was generated from their discussions outside parliament when it comes to debating and discussing matters Finance Bill 2023, it came out very, very clearly that most of them had not been able to understand what was happening. Actually, I heard some of them saying that this Finance Bill 2023 introduced a 5% farm tax, which was not true. 5% tax, farm tax was not introduced last year. What the Finance Bill of last year did was actually to amend the Tax Procedures Act adjustments so that it can allow, the Tax Procedures Act can allow us to collect that tax that we were not collecting previously. And by the way, the same amendment has been proposed within this year's finance proposal, the one that I'm holding here. There is an amendment to actually amend the Tax Procedures Act so that we can allow KRA to collect levies and taxes that they have not been collecting there before. And therefore, I think for me, my work is to actually read and interpret this to my voters, and that is what I assume every other member of parliament should do. So whether they read or not, it's up to them with their voters. I mean, it's up to them to, to account to their voters. But for me, my work is to read, interpret this to my voters, ask for their views and opinions and suggestions. And by the way, I also want to flag out something that I have noted with this finance bill, that as a lawmaker, I think we are not doing the right thing, and we need to flag out some of these things, some of the irregular things that are being done, even as we pass this or we plan to pass this proposal. We cannot be making laws and then we make other laws to obscure the laws we have made. For example, this finance proposal 2024 proposes that we amend the Data Protection Act, and it is an act that I personally participated very actively in making in the last parliament. And we spent quite a lot of government resources and time making Data Protection Act. And then now we are proposing that the same act we made to protect the right of information for Kenyans, protecting personal information, we are now proposing that we amend without even asking the views of the people who actually helped us make that law last parliament. And there are many other laws that have been made previously that we are actually obscuring by proposing to amend or to touch or to overlay using this proposal. Another example I can use is the eco tax versus the NEMA, the National Environment Sustainability Management Act. That is an act that is already allowing the government of Kenya to collect some money towards sustainability of safe environment. And now we are introducing an eco levy that is already now coming to duplicate what the other act is doing. So I think for me as a member of parliament, my work is to flag out. Thank you.
Those are some of the things that we actually are having a conversation about here, and thank you so much for your insights on the same. I want to wind up because I'm totally out of time here, and I want to give each one of you a minute or two, just a minute to get to wind up on this particular conversation. Let me start with you, Dr. Makali.
This is what I would say. I would say that all is not lost. I think the government has heard that Kenyans are saying, listen to us. And that has come out very clear. Point number two, as members of parliament, we've been told that you go vote in line with what your voters are saying, not in line with what anybody else thinks. And I think what we need to tell members, and it's good they get this information, is voting in the House, majority will always have their way, the minority will have their say. So once you vote, depending on who has the majority of the votes, that's the direction the bill will take.
Are there proposals that could be proposed so that by the time you actually get into the voting stage?
Yeah. By the way, there is a chance to revise some of the, there is a chance to review and draw. Okay. So that's what I'm saying, all is not lost. Okay. Because this now will come to parliament, we will debate, but at the end of the day, when it comes to voting, whichever side wins, is what will carry the day.
Okay.
So that when members of the public are telling members, so I want to insist that members of the public, it's time we apply pressure to your member of parliament so that they vote in line with what you are telling them. Otherwise, the bill can easily sail through, and we will have no choice so long as the majority have voted for the bill.
Okay,
the last item which I want just to conclude now is the issue that the expenditure side.
Thank you so much for your time. Thank you.
Members of Parliament, you are our last right of defense. If you let us down, we Kenyans will be very, very disappointed. Two, please save us from this bait and switch thing. You put 16% on bread so that when you remove it, you sound like you have done anything for Kenyans. Or you hike the price of fuel, then you lower it. You know, that game is not useful to Kenyans.
Okay.
When you talk about the cost of living, it is not just the cost of packet of unga, so that you keep singing to us that ilikuja chini. It's the whole package. And that is why we are saying, unless you address yourself to the budget, you cannot tell us that there's anything you're going to help us with on the financing side.
Dr. Mutunga, as we wind up your final remarks.
Yeah, I just wanted to note that my colleague, Honorable Mchomba, corrected me by saying that some farmers have not received, which means they will receive. It's just a matter of time. Farmers are receiving. On the other hand, let me say that this budget has positive things that you need to appreciate. First of all, there was a government policy that we reduce the cost to semi-autonomous government agencies by 30%.
Okay.
It has revised. This budget has also reinstated the school feeding program.
So if it comes
so
the way...
I just wanted to give you 3, 4, 5 positive things that we need to...
if it is presented the way it is...
Yes, if it is presented the way it is. Budget, I mean, this is a... Yeah, those are some of the highlights that are coming. We have also, there was the upgrading for interns. Those interns who have been, who are being flashed out there. 5 billion has been put to
so the way it is, which one, how will you vote?
So
if it's
the idea that if it is passed the way it
anything.
is, it has even taken care of the debts that have already been assessed by the ones that have been verified.
Okay, Honorable Diritu, 30
So
seconds. What does the future look like under this particular budget?
I would encourage our members of parliament that they are not helpless. As they go about their work, they should take some lessons from the devolved level of government where it's a fee for service.
Okay.
As the next cycle comes, they should pay attention to the budget policy statement, not wait to cry at the last. And whatever systems they create, they should create systems that work. For example, e-Teams has been on outage for many days. Even as SMEs are trying to comply with what the taxman wants, e-Team has not been working as it should.
All right.
E-Citizen, for example, does not work for young people.
Okay.
If you are 17 or whatever, you cannot use e-Citizen. So I'm just saying, as they do their work, they must remember to create systems that work for all Kenyans.
All right.
I thank you.
Thank you so much for your time. I really do appreciate it. I wish that we had more time, but it's really late. It's a conversation that we cannot get to finish in just one particular sitting. Thank you so much, Dr. Mutunga, for your time, making time for this conversation tonight. Jeremiah Kioni, who is the Secretary General for Jubilee Party, thank you so much. Honorable Diritu Murithi, former Laikipia Governor, I do appreciate your time so much. And Dr. Makalimulu, thank you so much for coming tonight to have a conversation about the state of the nation and something that is going to define the coming financial year. Now, my name is Brian Amwai. It is an honor and a pleasure to always do this and bring you up to date with what is happening in the country and have conversations that matter to you. I want to throw it to Harry Chimea, who is in the other studio, to just take a look at what you're saying online as far as this conversation is concerned. It is a good night for me.
Right, Amwai, and as we wind up the conversation on the budget outcry, more Kenyans continue decrying the over-taxation occasioned by the Finance Bill 2024. And of course, it is a conversation that we've had, urging Kenyans to raise their voices as ahead of the budget hearing come Thursday. And so to sample just some of the comments on our SMS line, and the question, just to recap, it was, what are the views on the Finance Bill 2024 and the budget set to be read on Thursday? What are your views on the Finance Bill 2024 and the budget set to be read on Thursday? So just to sample some of the comments from Kenyans on our SMS line, we have several, and they will line up in your screen just shortly. And we have one who says, I want to ask this question to this gentleman who said he would love to hear a farmer complain. Does it mean that for the production of milk, there is no cost used? Doesn't he think the cost of animal feeds is high? And we have another one which says, hello, I am Mato. I always ask myself, why don't you feel the outcry of the police officers? Always their salaries being slashed, yet they can go on strike since they're not allowed, or rather, yet they cannot go on strike since they're not allowed. Mbona huwa hamtetei askari? And that is Mato's question. And just to have one other feedback, there's one other person, and allow me to read it in Swahili. He says, tuvumilie tu kwa Wakenya kwa sababu tushavulia nguo, so tuyaoge. And that is one of the comment. And just to read one more, which is a bit quite long, Kenyans must have a lot to say. And he says, hii overtaxation budget iko juu sana, manake Mkenya wa kawaida anafinyiliwa sana, na mahali inafaa kutiliwa maanani sana ni upande sekta elimu. Ipunguzwe angalau hata yule mtoto wa maskini naye aweze kutimiza ndoto zake. Na and of course we also have one more feedback just to sample for you, is, or rather we have one more from the SMS, and rather also from the K24 TV online platform, that is X. One more says, if the current Finance Act has not managed to collect what was targeted, and now we have a new act that projects to collect even more, is it even realistic? And we also have an SMS that is on your screen, and it says, my fellow countrymen, this is now our chance to be sober when electing leaders come 2027. That is an SMS from Edwin Quinta. And those are some of the sentiments of Kenyans, with a majority of them shooting the Finance Bill 2024 and the budget all together. So all our eyes and ears are now awaiting the Thursday hearing. Will the Kenyans' opinion be weighed? Is it a weighty matter for the government to listen to them? It is a wait and see. Over to you, Linda Koskei.
Thank you so much, Jimea, for that. That's those are interesting feedbacks, and that was an interesting conversation from the legislators who were speaking earlier on. And I think we can just pick it from there. We left off at the excise imposed on bread as a decoy to hide what is beneath the true taxation. So I think I'll give a chance Job to weigh in on that. Do you think these prominent excise taxes that have been talked about, mention eco tax, took over bread, took over palm oil production and edible oil set to go high, do you think this is just a decoy?
Yes, yes. If we overtalk about the bread, and it's likely to be dropped as far as the VAT is concerned, and we are hopeful that it's going to be dropped because actually it's a big pain for Kenyans. Mm-hmm. But that notwithstanding, there's some other areas that we also need to look into. Yeah. For instance, when you're talking about the digital money transfer, the excise duty is changing from 15 to 20%. I've not heard us talking about this, and everybody is being affected by that tax. When talking about the motor vehicle tax and the ripple effect, if you're talking of 2.5% change, the value of the car, and on top of that, you realize then we have like an equal level that's being charged on the tires. You find that the ripple effect or the economics around that car, they are quite huge in terms of a turn boy, in terms of a driver, in terms of a mechanic, in terms of someone who sells the spare parts. If today I say enough is enough, I don't want this car any longer, I'm looking at how many people are going to be affected, and it's a discussion that you need to look into more deeply.
And do you think the production of these commodities will go down, and even other companies who are intending to build up in Kenya move to other nations because of unfavorable markets?
Of course, this is likely to happen because if you put a motor vehicle levy, especially if you look at a vehicle that is not bringing you returns, you're moving with it from home to the office, no returns, just facilitating your movement from one place to the other. Or even look at the commercial vehicles. These they need to remain competitive for the wananchi, like now the matatus. You'll see that from 1st of July, if this goes through, the matatus are going to ensure that the average cost on the motor vehicle levy has been charged on those who are using those matatus. So when you look at it that way, there is direct effect on the consumers or those who are using that, and subsequently we may see the reduction in terms of the purchase of the same. And what we are talking about is reduction again of the economic activities from where now the government is able to draw its revenues from, or where Kenyans are able to draw their wages from. We talked about the eco-levy. If you look at the eco-levy again, and you're not opposed to it because it is an environmental conservation measure. But you're looking at it as a duplicated cost, because we have what is called extended producer responsibility, whereby we pay EPR levies to a third party who collects commensurate amount of the product that is deemed to pollute the environment at a fee. And then in Finance Bill 2024, we get now the eco-levy that is being charged. You see this is going to have a very huge effect on various sectors. We're talking of like now the rubber sector. We see 1,000 shillings per tire. If you're talking about the batteries, if there's that battery that we normally buy for at 8,000, the charge is 750 shillings per kg of a new battery. So if 750 shillings and a battery is about 10 kgs, you multiply by 10 to get 7,500 on top. So 8,000 plus 7,500 on top in the region of 16,000. That's 100% increment.
So basically, what are we staring at, especially as one of the key sectors that really contributes much to the country's GDP?
Yes, we are staring at a situation whereby we can see the reduction of activities, and we talked about this in Finance Act 2023. We told the government, we're going to lose jobs, we're going to lose investment. And even you're telling them that this time round, you're going still to lose the same. What now it's important, can we sit down and listen to each other? It does no harm. If I say so, I come and prove my case, and the government now can counter prove its case. We get a middle ground, and then we can be able to move the country ahead together.
And to you, Jude, you know, you have been in the legislative sector for quite some time. You are a former member of parliament for Kiambu. How was it during your time? And if you just look back to 2024, from 2015 to 2024, 2025 budgets.
Thank you. Before we went on break, I was trying to explain that how bread is being used as a decoy, so that we do not concentrate on some other very nitty-gritties. And I was explaining how the digital tax for the young people who are doing creative work in social media, and how they have created their own industry and they are making money out of it. And the government has done zero investment in that area, and they now want to invest. And my challenge to government is they should invest in that industry, so that more and more young people get into this industry, they do better quality work, and everybody is happy. That way, the young people will now start paying tax, having known that the government have helped them to be where they are, and they'll be happy to pay. But for now, the government has not invested any money, and they want this digital tax to be paid to be paid. So I think the government needs to invest in that area. Two, it is our hope that our parliament will have its own teeth. The constitution gives our parliament independence. They should be independent of the executive. They should be able to make their own decision on how we are going to take this taxation.
But is there that's
this is a budget making parliament. But now it looks like whatever is brought to them, they are told you must pass this one. That parliament, that house is not a choir house. Is a house where members are expected to argue their points and to make decisions that are going to move this country forward. The president the other day pronounced that we are at 16% taxation to our GDP, and they promised that by 2027 we shall be approaching 2022. So if my friend here from Kenya Association of Manufacturers is complaining now, Bwana Job, I think you need to pack, because by the time we are at 22, I don't think there will be any manufacturing happening in our country. Our employment will be going to zero, because it will be very, very difficult for any business to survive in this country.
And even so, we had Dr. Mutunga, who was right there in Brian's discussion, saying that give the government a chance. But on the flip side, earlier on when we had an outside broadcast in Kiambu County, we heard that Kenyans are really reeling. And that's why we call this budget outcry. So do you think there is any confidence, even from the common mwananchi and also from where you sit?
After the swearing in of the KK government, they told us to give them a chance. And we did. And we watched as they progressed. And immediately they put 8%. The first thing they did was to remove the subsidy that were given by the Jubilee government. Immediately that they were sworn in. Immediately after that, they brought in the 8% VAT, additional 8% VAT on fuel. And that increased the cost of doing business across every sector of the economy. Now, they also now introduced the housing levy. A levy that was nowhere, 1.5% of everybody's salary. Now, they have come to now bread and all those others. So I don't know where we are headed. I don't know how we are going to survive, because we are being now struggled in terms of taxation, and it will come to a place where, like the manufacturers are saying, that they are going to move to other countries. We cannot move to other countries because we belong to Kenya. We have nowhere to go.
But what should be done now? Businesses are willing to stay, but now they're being suffocated by the taxes. Is it the tax policy, or what is the main issue here?
The tax policy is a very good document, but it is not being followed. They're just making declarations and putting things into budget. To me, what we need to do is to introduce efficiency in our systems. I was reading the paper yesterday and I was impressed. Murang'a County government have doubled their collection within that one and a half years that they have been in power. They have increased their collection by about 50%. They did not increase a single tax. They just improved on efficiency. The same thing should be done on the national government. They should improve on the efficiency of collection, and then they should seal all the loopholes where we are losing money, because we are losing a lot of money. A lot of money is being lost and not being used prudently through corruption, through misuse of public funds, and through expenditure that is not important, that can wait. You get what I'm saying? So if that is done, I'm sure it would not be very necessary to increase taxation to the levels that the government is proposing. And secondly, sometimes we are importing things that we don't need to import. If we help our farmers to grow crops and feed ourselves, then we don't need to import rice, we don't need to import maize. Maize is our staple food, and we are still importing it. And we can help our farmers to irrigate their farms, bring them proper fertilizer, not that maram they are being supplied with and told that it is maram. Because we are saying, yes, we are going to have a bumper harvest this year. But can you imagine if we had good fertilizer and God has given us good rain, we would have very good harvest this year. But now we planted using fake fertilizer, and that is why we cannot be able to get the...
But now that brings the question of who's the weakest link here, because the government at the same time is looking forward to ensuring that the country is self-reliant when it comes to food security. But at the same time, we are seeing there's fake fertilizer in the market. But who is the weakest link? Because up to this point, we don't know how this really panned out.
The weakest link here is those people who are given responsibilities, public responsibilities, and they use it to enrich themselves. They do not have that call to serve. They do not have that patriotism to help our country to grow to the next level. They are looking for every opportunity of how can we divert this money, which is supposed to go to that project, to come to my own source, to come to my own, to be my own resource. Because some of them are accumulating money, which they're going to use for in 2027 to look for the same positions. Because also as Wananchi, we should also now become smart and stop electing people because they are able to provide us with money during campaign time. They are we stop electing people because we think they are in the right parties. We elect people who we think and who we have experience, and who we have expectations that they are going to deliver on their mandate. Because we know some people, if somebody has been involved in corruption, even in the corporate world where he was, and now he's coming into political world, what else do you expect? You know, he has been doing corruption, so even if it comes to government, he'll still continue doing corruption. But because he has come with money, he becomes very influential to the society because he's contributing big chunks of money in Harambe's. He's entertaining people, he's buying them t-shirts and what have you.
So the back really stops at the common Mwananchi and who they vote in. But now, from a business perspective, to you, Job, CAM tabled their concerns to the finance committee on this finance bill, and you also did the same in the 2023-2024 financial year report. How was do you think there was anything that was implemented, and do you feel like this time there are things that you've tabled and you have a feeling they're going to be adhered to? Or you're getting ready to move out of the country?
One is last year we tabled a number of proposals to the government, and one it was around what is called the Export Promotion Investment Levy, a levy that was being charged 17.5% on raw materials and intermediate products that are imported into the country for value addition, and we don't have adequate production in the country. And that is in the cement space, in the steel space, in the paper space. And those are some of the sectors that we told the government that we are going to see, or you're going to face music in them in terms of job losses, investments and all. And I gave a story of how it happened, and some companies have shut. And this time round, we have seen the government now trying to improve on that list, whereby the imposition of export promotion investment levy at 10%, some cases, other cases at 3%, and other cases 20%, is where we have abundance production in the country in terms of finished product. And that list contains about 70 tariff lines that we have abundance production in the country. But still we have some other intermediate products and raw materials that we don't have abundance production in the country, and we're asking the government just remove them, because in those sectors those industries are going to die. And that notwithstanding,
is there a figure that you foresee if this is passed as is? This is the approximate number that companies are going to shut down, because previously we had a list that over 30 companies closed down after the passing of the Finance Bill 2023.
We're in the process of now undertaking that because the Finance Act 2023 impact assessment, we carried it out after the 1st of July 2023. But to prevent what happened when we are carrying out that, we shared that report to the government and told them this is a fact. These numbers of jobs are going to be lost. These companies are going to shut down. So we are waiting to see if the government is going to implement the proposals that we have opposed. If they are going to be implemented, then we can project based on the responses that we're going to get from our members. We have had oil manufacturers saying if this 25% is going to be still to be there as far as excise duty, we are going to reconsider our decision of further investments in the country, and we can move to other countries, and you know those are 13 investors.
And also it will lead to infiltration of cheap products into the country.
Because
people would go for cheap.
In fact, what is happening, it is we are trade diverting to Uganda and Tanzania, because if you look at the case of like now Uganda and Tanzania as far as the edible oil manufacturing is concerned, you'll see that for Tanzania, effective taxation rate is 1.5%. Uganda is 1.5% effective taxation rate in terms of importation. That is the landed cost in terms of taxation rate. But for Kenya, we are talking of 68.8%. So it's a whopping difference between us and these countries.
And what happens to the agreements that we have with the EAC nations and the COMESA?
So these are the domestic taxes. And domestic taxes, we have to look at them from the perspective, from the trade agreements that we have signed. Within the EAC, African Continental Free Trade Area, Tripartite Free Trade Area, whereby, or even the Economic Partnership Agreement with the UK and the EU, all these is where we sell our goods after value addition in the country. So if our domestic duties are wanting, you find that penetration of those markets becomes a bit hard. And instead of us penetrating now the Ugandan and Tanzanian market with our edible oil, you find that not only that they're selling their countries better, but they're also transferring more into our country. So it's a forced closure because of a higher taxation rate. I've given you a very good example of that sector. 68.8% is our effective importation rate when you add the excise duty and the nut and oil crop levy, the import declaration fee, the eco levy, all these. But for Tanzania, 1.5%. So that means they're starting on a cost legroom of about 66% in terms of cost advantage. Will you compete with them in the market? And we can move on from one sector to the other, sector to the other, giving examples.
I wish we had more time. I wish we had more time because we really have to discuss more about the trade agreements that we have between the rest of the countries. But before I take your parting shot, let's June speak about also being a legislature before the implementations. He's talked about the weak links, but now what are your expectations ahead of the budget reading this Thursday as you give your parting shot as well?
Okay, now we know that the Committee on Finance has finished collecting views from the public through public participation. And we hope that they are going to listen to the views that they have been given. I hope that they will remember that they have the powers vested on them by the Constitution to make a proper finance bill. A bill that is not going to kill or strangle our wananchi through over taxation. In particular, I'm very sympathetic to our young mothers because through this eco-tax, the cost of diapers are going to increase by about 150 shillings per kilo. We know already it's very difficult for them to get diapers, but now they have to pay even more. So either people start planning their families, or they go back to the old nappies, which they have to wash, because it's going to be very, very, very expensive. However, we must always remember the government must tax, because the government has no other way of getting its funds apart from getting it through taxation. So we are not saying that the government should not tax, but it should tax in a way that it is live and let live. It should be in such a way that the taxation will enable us to grow and to improve our economy. It should tax in such a way that we don't have to break our backs to pay for it, to pay for the taxation. And the government should appreciate that the more vibrant we become economically, the more the government is going to earn. So instead of giving us funny fertilizers, the government should be there to provide us with enabling environment and services that will make me as Mwananchi to produce more. Because when I produce more, the government will earn.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, June Jomo, for that. Before I let you give your quick parting shots, we can get some feedback. What are Kenyans saying in the social media, Chimia?
On my side, it's more of a wind-up. It has been an absolute honor voicing the opinions of Kenyans. And as I said earlier, the buck now stops with the government. Will they take into account the opinions of Kenyans? Well, it's a wait and see come Thursday. And as of now, my name is Harriet Chimea. Take it away, Linda.
Thank you so much, Chimea. Thank you for the feedback and for taking your time. Joe, perhaps a quick parting shot from you before we close this up.
As far as the budget reading on Thursday is concerned, I'm looking at how we can have further fiscal consolidation in terms of the expenditure by the government, so that we don't look at how we can overtax a few Kenyans who are contributing to these taxes. I know we are getting to the second reading after the report has been prepared on Finance Bill 2024 by the committee. What I would ask is that let the committee and the parliament and the president listen to the views that have been presented by Kenyans, and if there is any further clarification that to be made, we are here to go and do that.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for making that brief as well. Well, that has been quite a conversation, yeah? Thank you so much, gentlemen, for those insightful discussions with us. It has been Kenya Association of Manufacturers Head of Policy, Research and Advocacy, Job Wanjoy. Thank you so much for creating time and being with us until now. And we also had in studio Jude Njomo. Thank you so much for creating time amid your very busy schedule. Thank you so much. We truly appreciate. And that's how we wrap up this show today. This coverage, Kameme TV and K24 TV, that has been a special edition. And from there, we started from 6 p.m. until this very moment. So thank you for being part of this show today, and also the entire crew that made this possible until this very moment. We truly appreciate, and we'll be keeping a keen eye on what will be happening this week ahead of the budget reading this Thursday by Treasury, the budget reading 2024-2025. A lot has been said. Many people are waiting with bated breath to see whether this finance bill will be a catalyst for economic growth and stability, or will it come with challenges and uncertainties to Kenyans? Well, like Chimea said, it's a wait and see situation. Thank you so much. My name is Linda Koskei. See you again next time.